You are not failing because you lack intelligence or ambition. You are failing because, without even realizing it, you are engaging in habits that are actively destroying your life. And the worst part? You don't even see it happening. Every single day, you are caught in an invisible trap, a cycle of behaviors that keep you stuck, drained, and powerless. You complain about life being unfair. You compare yourself to others. You waste hours on distractions. You hold grudges, waiting for justice that will never come. But here's the truth that no one wants to tell you. If you keep living this way, you will wake up one day, 10 years from now, and realize nothing has changed, except you are older, more frustrated, and filled with regret. This is not a warning. This is reality. But here's the good news. You don't have to stay stuck. The ancient Stoics mastered the art of mental resilience, self-discipline, and control. They understood something that most people ignore. Life is not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. And today, you're going to learn exactly what's been holding you back, and more importantly, how to break free. These are the 8 toxic habits that are sabotaging your success, stealing your happiness, and trapping you in mediocrity. It's time to stop them before they stop you. Because if you don't take control now, who will? 1. Stop complaining and blaming. You are not a victim. Mike was 32 years old, and for as long as he could remember, he had one habit that defined his life: blaming everything and everyone except himself. His job sucked because his boss was an idiot. His relationships failed because his exes never understood him. His financial struggles? Of course, they were because of the unstable economy, greedy corporations, and an unfair system. But there was one question he never dared to ask himself. What had he done to change any of it? Mike saw himself as a victim of life, a puppet controlled by the strings of fate. But here's the brutal truth. He was holding the strings all along. Most people, just like Mike, believe that life is unfair. They feel trapped, abandoned, and powerless, convinced that external forces are conspiring against them. They look at successful people and assume they had better opportunities, better luck, or better connections. They blame their upbringing, their past, the government, their boss, their family, everything but themselves. But here's what no one tells you. Life does not respond to how much you suffer. Life responds to what you do. The more you complain, the deeper you sink into a victim mentality, and the harder it becomes to take action. Complaining is easy. Blaming external circumstances is easy. But that ease comes at a cost. It robs you of your power to change. Because as long as your problems are someone else's fault, you will never feel responsible for fixing them. The Stoics understood this over 2,000 years ago. Seneca, in Moral Letters to Lucilius, once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The moment you believe that external events control your happiness, you have already lost. Your boss is not in control of you. The economy is not in control of you. Your past is not in control of you. The only thing that truly belongs to you is your reaction to these things. That's where your power lies. Psychologists have confirmed what the Stoics knew all along. People who constantly complain develop a negative feedback loop in their brain. The more they complain, the more they train their mind to see problems instead of solutions. Over time, this becomes their identity. I am unlucky. I am stuck. I am helpless. But here's the truth. You are not helpless. You have just been taught to believe that you are. Consider Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, a man who transformed personal hardship into relentless strength. As a child, Roosevelt was frail, constantly battling severe asthma that left him gasping for breath in the middle of the night. He could have easily resigned himself to a life of weakness, blaming his condition for his limitations. but instead he chose a different path. Rather than seeing his frailty as a curse, Roosevelt turned it into fuel. He adopted an intense physical training regimen, pushing his body beyond its limits, determined to build himself into a warrior. His philosophy was simple: do what you can with what you have, where you are. He refused to let external circumstances dictate his potential. As a result, the once sickly boy grew into a robust man known for his unshakable toughness, leading daring expeditions, charging into battle with his Rough Riders, and shaping the modern presidency with unparalleled energy. Roosevelt could have spent his life complaining about his poor health, blaming fate for his struggles. Instead, he owned his adversity and used it as a stepping stone to greatness. His life is proof that the obstacles in your way are not meant to break you, they are meant to make you unbreakable. Now ask yourself, if a man who was born weak and sickly refused to let his condition define him, what excuse do you have? You are not bound by chains. You are not gasping for air in the dead of night, struggling against a body that won't cooperate. The only thing holding you back is the story you keep telling yourself, the belief that your circumstances control you. But just like Roosevelt, you have a choice. You can keep blaming the world for your struggles, or you can use them as the very force that propels you forward. The bars of your prison are not real. The door has never been locked. You just have to step through it. If you want to break free, start now. Write down 3 things you constantly complain about. It could be your job, your relationships, your finances. Now, instead of blaming others, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do today to improve this situation? For the next 24 hours, challenge yourself. No complaints, no blame, only action. The next time you feel the urge to whine about something, force yourself to find a solution instead. The world doesn't change because you complain about it. It changes because you take responsibility for your own life. So the real question is, are you ready to take back control, or will you keep letting life happen to you? 2. Stop living for others and break free from the fear of judgment. You've decided to take back control of your life. You refuse to be a victim. But as you finally step forward, another invisible force tightens its grip on you, the fear of what others think. Maybe you want to start a new career, take a bold risk, or simply express yourself more freely. But just as you're about to act, a voice whispers, "What will people say? What if they think I'm a failure? What if I embarrass myself?" And suddenly, you hesitate. Not because you don't know what to do, but because your life is still dictated by them, by their opinions, their judgments, their silent expectations. You don't realize it, but you are still living inside a prison. This time, the walls are not built from external circumstances, but from your own fear of judgment. Most people spend their lives seeking approval, molding themselves to fit in, sacrificing their dreams to avoid criticism. They choose careers that look good on paper, relationships that feel socially acceptable, and paths that minimize risk, not because these choices make them happy, but because they fear standing out. Like a fish in a glass tank, they can see the vast ocean of possibilities beyond, yet they remain trapped, afraid to swim into the unknown, afraid of what others might say. But here's the truth. No one is thinking about you as much as you think they are. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, a cognitive bias that makes people believe they are constantly being watched and judged. In reality, most people are too busy worrying about themselves to be scrutinizing you. They glance at you, register your presence for a fleeting second, then return to their own problems, their own insecurities. And yet, because you believe that their eyes are always on you, You adjust your every action to avoid imaginary criticism. You silence your opinions, suppress your desires, and let fear dictate your choices. Epictetus, in Discourses, gave a simple but powerful warning. If you wish to be free, do not wish for anything that depends on others. If your happiness depends on validation from the outside world, you will never truly own your life. Every decision will be weighed against the fear of rejection. But here's the irony. The people you are so afraid of impressing won't even remember you in a week. Consider Amelia Earhart, a woman who defied the expectations of an entire era. Born at a time when women were expected to be silent, reserved, and confined to traditional roles, she chose instead to chase the sky. Becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic was not just a physical achievement. It was an act of defiance against a world that told her she couldn't. She faced relentless criticism, skepticism, and doubt from society, yet she refused to let public opinion dictate her choices. Instead of seeking validation, she embraced the uncertainty, knowing that the only approval that mattered was her own. She once said, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." If a woman, in an era of rigid societal norms, could silence the voices of doubt and carve her own path, what's stopping you? Now, take a moment to reflect. How much of your life is truly yours? Are you making choices that align with your dreams, or are you still trapped in the expectations of your family, society, or social media? If you continue this way, where will it lead? 5 years from now, will you be any closer to the life you want? Or will you still be standing in the same place, paralyzed by fear? If you're tired of living like this, then it's time to break free. Do something today that scares you, not because it guarantees success, but because it teaches you that fear has no real power. Speak up in a meeting, post that video, make that career change, and every time doubt creeps in, ask yourself, am I doing this for me or for them? The answer will determine whether you stay in the cage or finally set yourself free. 3. Break free from autopilot mode and stop waiting for the perfect time. You wake up, grab your phone, scroll through the same mindless feed, get dressed, go to work, follow the same routine, come home, watch TV, and repeat. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. And suddenly, years have passed, yet nothing has truly changed. You tell yourself you'll start that project, switch careers, or chase that dream, just not today. You convince yourself that someday, when things are just right, when the timing is perfect, you will finally take action. But deep down, you know the truth. That perfect moment will never come. Most people live life on autopilot, moving through the world without truly being awake. They follow routines not because they serve them, but because they are convenient, familiar, and safe. Psychologists confirm that the brain defaults to comfort, avoiding challenges because they require energy and effort. The longer you remain in this passive state, the harder it becomes to break free. It's not that you lack time, it's that you have fallen into a cycle of unconscious repetition. A more fitting Stoic perspective on why waiting for the perfect time is an illusion comes from Epictetus, whose teachings emphasize that action, not circumstances, defines a person's life. He did not believe in waiting for ideal conditions, but instead argued that we must act with what we have, in the moment we have. If Epictetus were to address the illusion of the perfect time, he might say, "You do not control when opportunities arise, only whether you are prepared to seize them. Waiting is surrendering your power to the unknown. The wise act now, for later is never promised." This aligns perfectly with Stoic philosophy. Life is uncertain, but our response is always within our control. The moment you delay action because of uncertainty, you hand over control to circumstances rather than claiming it for yourself. If you are waiting for the perfect time, you are choosing inaction, and in that choice, you are letting life pass you by. Think of Steve Jobs. If he had waited for the right time, Apple wouldn't exist. He didn't wait for certainty, funding, or a clear path. He simply started. When he and Steve Wozniak built their first computer in a garage, there was no guarantee of success, no grand plan, no certainty. But they acted. Jobs once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." And yet, most people do exactly that. They delay their dreams, telling themselves that someday, when things settle down, when they have more time, more money, more confidence, they'll begin. But that day never comes, because life is always unpredictable, always in motion. Now, look at your own life. What have you been postponing? What dreams have you buried beneath excuses? If you were given 6 months to live, would you keep waiting, or would you start moving today? The solution is simple. Stop waiting, start doing. Write down one thing you have been putting off for months or years. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be something you've convinced yourself you'll do later. Now, take one step toward it. Not tomorrow. Now, your life is happening in real time, not in some distant future where conditions are perfect. The people who achieve their dreams are not the ones who waited, they are the ones who started before they were ready. Be one of them. 4. Break free from social media. Addiction and reclaim your mind. You're finally taking action. No more waiting for the perfect moment. But now, a new challenge emerges, not hesitation, but constant distraction. You begin your day with intention, yet before you realize it, you've lost hours in a digital void. Your mind, once filled with ambition, is now cluttered with endless feeds, fleeting trends, and the lives of strangers. The world is not stopping you from achieving your goals. Your stolen focus is. And at the heart of this silent sabotage is something designed to keep you addicted: social media. You wake up, reach for your phone, and before you even realize it, you've been scrolling for an hour. It starts with checking messages, but then a notification leads to another post, another video, another endless stream of distractions. The real world fades. The dopamine hits from likes, comments, and algorithm-driven content keep pulling you in, making minutes disappear into hours. And yet, despite consuming more information than any generation before, you feel empty, restless, and unsatisfied. What started as a tool for connection has become a cage of distraction. Social media promises freedom of expression, but in reality, it has turned into a performance stage where validation dictates your self-worth. You post what makes you look good, not what reflects who you really are. You compare your behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's highlight reel, convincing yourself that you are falling behind, that your life is somehow less meaningful than the perfectly curated images you see online. And this is not an accident. Social media is designed to keep you addicted. Every swipe, every like, every notification is a psychological trap, engineered to hijack your brain's reward system. The moment you open an app, you are playing a game you cannot win. The more you consume, the more you crave. The more you compare, the more inadequate you feel. But no matter how much you scroll, you will never find the fulfillment you are looking for on a screen. Epictetus, in Discourses, warned against anything that takes control of your mind. If you do not control yourself, you will be controlled by something else. If you cannot step away from your phone without feeling restless, you are not the user, You are the product. Social media companies profit from your attention, and they will keep you trapped as long as you allow them to. Psychologists confirm that social media addiction works like gambling. It releases dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical, creating a cycle of reward and craving. Each notification is like pulling the lever of a slot machine. You never know if you'll get likes, comments, or nothing at all. And just like gambling, this intermittent reinforcement keeps you hooked, chasing a high that never truly satisfies. Imagine looking back at your life 10 years from now. Will you remember the posts you scrolled through, the endless hours lost in other people's lives? Or will you regret the time you wasted, the real moments you missed, the goals you never pursued because you were too distracted? The real world is happening now, but every second spent in the digital void is a second you never get back. If you are ready to reclaim your focus, start today. Set a strict time limit, 30 minutes a day, no more. Turn off notifications. Delete apps that serve no real purpose. And most importantly, challenge yourself. Go one full day without social media. At first, you may feel restless, anxious, disconnected. But then, something unexpected happens. You start noticing the world again. You reclaim the time that was stolen from you. You feel present in your own life. The truth is, social media is not the enemy. Your lack of control is. Use it wisely, or let it use you. The choice is, and always has been, yours. 5. Let go of resentment. Freedom begins with forgiveness. You've started reclaiming your time, breaking free from distractions, and taking control of your life. But beneath the surface, something still weighs you down, a burden that you carry, even if you don't realize it. It lingers in your thoughts, in the tension you feel when you hear a certain name, in the bitterness that resurfaces when you remember how someone hurt you. This invisible weight is resentment, and it is keeping you trapped in the past. Liam was 35 years old, and for over a decade, he held on to anger toward a former friend who had betrayed him. He convinced himself that this hatred was justified, that it somehow gave him power. But in truth, it consumed him. Then one day he received news that the friend had passed away. In that moment, all the anger, all the years of resentment suddenly meant nothing. The grudge he had nurtured for so long had robbed him of peace, and now there was no one left to forgive. The person he had spent years resenting was gone, but Liam was still carrying the weight of that pain. That's when he realized, resentment doesn't punish the other person, it only punishes you. Holding on to hatred is like gripping a heavy stone, believing that the tighter you hold it, the more it will hurt the other person. But the truth is, the longer you carry it, the more it weighs you down. You convince yourself that forgiving means losing, that it lets the other person off the hook. But in reality, forgiveness is not about them. It's about freeing yourself. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." The moment you allow hatred to control you, you are no longer living by your own values. You are reacting to someone else's actions. True strength is not found in holding on to anger, but in choosing not to let it define you. Psychologists confirm that holding on to resentment triggers chronic stress, activating the body's fight or flight response. When you replay past betrayals, your brain treats them as if they are happening in real time, flooding your body with stress hormones. Over time, this damages your physical and mental health, draining your energy, stealing your joy, and leaving you trapped in a cycle of pain. The person who wronged you moves on with their life, but you remain stuck. Consider Louis Zamperini, an Olympic athlete turned World War II soldier, who endured unimaginable suffering as a prisoner of war in Japan. After his plane crashed into the Pacific, he survived 47 days at sea, fighting starvation, shark attacks, and the relentless sun, only to be captured and subjected to years of brutal torture in a Japanese POW camp. Beaten, humiliated, and treated as less than human, he had every reason to leave that place with hatred burning inside him. Yet, when the war ended, he made an extraordinary choice. Instead of seeking revenge, he chose forgiveness. He understood that carrying hatred would keep him imprisoned, even though the war was over. Years later, he returned to Japan, not to confront his captors, but to forgive them. He even met with the guards who had tormented him, offering them kindness instead of resentment. In his memoir, Devil at My Heels, he wrote, "Hate is self-destructive. If you hate somebody, you're not hurting the person you hate, you're hurting yourself." Zamperini's life is proof that forgiveness is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. He refused to let his past define him, and in choosing to let go, he found peace. If a man who endured years of suffering could free himself from the weight of resentment, why can't you? Look at your own life. Who are you still holding on to anger toward? Is it a former friend, an ex, a family member, someone who betrayed your trust? Now ask yourself, does this resentment bring me happiness? Does replaying the past help you move forward? Or does it keep you locked in a battle that only exists in your mind? If you're ready to reclaim your freedom, start now. Write down the name of the person you still hold resentment toward, and beside it, write the answer to this question. What have I gained from holding on to this anger? If the answer is nothing but pain, it's time to let go. For the next 7 days, challenge yourself to find one positive lesson from that painful experience. Not for them, but for you. You don't have to send them a message, you don't have to reconcile, but you do have to release yourself from the weight of your own resentment. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean weakness. It means choosing your own peace over your past pain. The question is, are you ready to let go? 6. Stop comparing yourself to others. Focus on your own path. You've let go of resentment. The weight you carried for years, the grudges, the anger, the pain, has finally started to lift. But as you step forward, something else quietly takes its place. It's more subtle, less obvious, but just as dangerous. Comparison. You may no longer be trapped by the past, but are you still trapped by the lives of others? Are you measuring your worth by someone else's success? Because if you are, then you're still not free. David wakes up, grabs his phone, and within seconds he's drowning in a sea of curated perfection. His Instagram feed is filled with people who seem effortlessly successful, living in luxury, traveling the world, and achieving everything he wishes he could. His friends on Facebook are getting promotions, buying houses, and starting families. Every scroll reminds him of what he doesn't have, of where he hasn't been, of how he isn't enough. Without realizing it, David has become a leaf caught in the current of comparison, drifting wherever the waves of social media take him. He is no longer living his own life. He is measuring it against carefully edited highlights of others. And just like David, you've probably felt this too. You scroll through someone's success and wonder why you're not further ahead. You see their achievements and suddenly feel behind. You forget that what you are seeing is not the full picture, only the polished version they choose to share. But here's the truth. Comparison does not help you grow. It only steals your joy. You are comparing your raw reality to someone else's filtered success. You see the end result, not the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the failures they never post about. You see the applause, not the moments of doubt, struggle, and perseverance. And the more you compare, the more you diminish your own progress, forgetting that your path is unique, not a race against someone else's timeline. The Stoics understood that comparison is a trap that leads only to dissatisfaction. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, reminds us that we each have our own unique path, and to measure ourselves against others is to misunderstand the nature of life. No two people have the same circumstances, the same obstacles, or the same journey. To judge yourself by someone else's progress is as irrational as expecting an olive tree to grow at the same pace as an oak. Your only true measure of success is whether you are improving, not whether you are ahead of someone else. True growth is personal, not comparative, and the only competitor you should ever face is the person you were yesterday. Psychologists describe two types of social comparison, and both are dangerous. Upward comparison happens when you look at someone more successful and feel inadequate. Downward comparison happens when you look at someone struggling and feel superior. Both distort reality. One makes you feel unworthy, the other makes you complacent. Neither leads to real progress. Michael Phelps, one of the greatest Olympians of all time, understood this better than anyone. In every race, his focus was singular, his own lane. He never looked at his competitors while swimming because he knew that a single glance sideways would slow him down. In contrast, Ryan Lochte, another Olympic swimmer, often checked the lanes beside him, and that hesitation cost him victories. Phelps once said, "You can't put a limit on anything. The more you dream, the farther you get." His success was never about being better than others. It was about being the best version of himself. Now, ask yourself, whose lane are you swimming in? Are you focused on your own progress? Or are you constantly checking the competition, slowing yourself down with unnecessary comparisons? If you keep looking at others, you'll never reach your full potential because your energy will always be divided. If you want to break free from this cycle, start now. Write down 3 things you are proud of that have nothing to do with anyone else. Not because they make you look good, but because they represent your own progress. Then, commit to the 1% rule. Each day, focus on improving just 1% from where you were yesterday. Growth is not measured by beating others. It is measured by consistent, personal improvement. For the next 24 hours, challenge yourself to live without comparison. Don't check where others are. Don't measure your success against someone else's timeline. Just focus on your next step. Because at the end of the day, the only person you are truly competing with is the person in the mirror. 7. Stop trying to control everything. Master yourself instead. You've finally stopped comparing yourself to others. You've realized that your only real competition is who you were yesterday. But just as you start focusing on your own path, a new struggle emerges, the need for control. You want life to go according to plan. You want certainty, predictability, and assurance that things will work out exactly as you envision. And when they don't, frustration, anxiety, and stress take over. You plan every detail of your life, believing that if you just work hard enough, strategize smart enough, and anticipate every possibility, things will go your way. But no matter how much effort you put in, reality refuses to bend to your will. The weather changes, markets crash, people disappoint you, plans fall apart. And in those moments, you feel helpless, trapped in a world that refuses to be controlled. The truth is, control is an illusion, at least the kind of control you seek. No matter how much you try, you cannot dictate every outcome. You cannot control the external world, but you can always control yourself. Epictetus, in Discourses, said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." This is one of the most fundamental teachings of Stoicism. The moment you waste energy trying to control what is not yours to control, you are setting yourself up for suffering. The key to freedom is learning to differentiate between what is within your power and what is not. Psychologists confirm what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Anxiety often stems from trying to control things beyond our reach. The more you try to dictate the uncontrollable, the more powerless you feel. But the moment you shift your focus to what you can control, your actions, your mindset, your reactions, your stress begins to disappear. Imagine a sailor caught in a violent storm at sea. He cannot control the wind, the waves, or the chaos around him, but he can control his ship. He can adjust his sails, steer with precision, and navigate through the storm without resistance. Those who fight the storm are destroyed by it. Those who adapt to it find their way through. Life works the same way. You can fight reality, waste energy resisting the inevitable, or you can learn to navigate it with wisdom. Instead of trying to control everything, ask yourself, what is actually within my power? If something is beyond your influence, let it go. If something is within your reach, focus all your energy on mastering it. To put this into practice, write down 5 things you are currently worrying about. Now, divide them into 2 categories, things you can control and things you cannot. The next step is simple. Release the things you can't change and dedicate yourself fully to what you can. For the next 24 hours, challenge yourself to practice radical acceptance. Every time you feel frustration creeping in, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, take action without hesitation, because true power is not found in controlling the world. It is found in mastering yourself. 8. Stop living as if you have forever. Time waits for no one. You've stopped trying to control the uncontrollable. You've learned to let go of things beyond your reach and focus on what you can change. But there's one last illusion keeping you stuck, the belief that you have time. You assume that tomorrow will always be there, that opportunities will wait, that you can start later. And so, you delay. You postpone your dreams, push aside what truly matters, and tell yourself that one day, when the conditions are right, when life slows down, when you're ready, then you will finally start living. But the truth is, time is the only resource you can never reclaim. Every second that passes is a second you will never get back. You spend money, you can earn it back. You lose possessions, you can replace them. But time, once it's gone forever. One of the greatest reminders of this came from Randy Pausch, a professor at Carnegie Mellon University who was diagnosed with terminal cancer at the age of 46. Faced with only a few months to live, he delivered his now famous last lecture, titled "Really Achieving Your Childhood Dreams." In it, he didn't talk about dying, he talked about living. He urged people to stop postponing their dreams, to cherish time, and to focus on what truly matters. In his final months, he didn't waste time dwelling on what he couldn't control. He lived with purpose, joy, and urgency. His lecture has since inspired millions because it revealed a simple truth. We all have limited time, but most of us don't realize it until it's too late. Most people live as if time is infinite, delaying their dreams, putting off what truly matters, and assuming they will always have another chance. But the reality is, life is not short. Most people just waste it. Seneca, in On the Shortness of Life, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." You hesitate, telling yourself there's always tomorrow. But while you fear failure and discomfort, you treat time as if it will always be available to you. It won't. You don't control how many days you have left, but you do control whether today is wasted or meaningful. Stop living as if you have forever, because you don't. The Stoics embraced a concept that forces you to confront this reality: memento mori. Remember, you will die. Not in some distant theoretical future, but in a life that is constantly moving, a clock that never stops ticking. And while you cannot control when that moment comes, you can control what you do before it arrives. If you were told you had 1 year left to live, what would you do differently? Would you still waste time on meaningless distractions, on fears that don't matter, on waiting for the perfect moment? Or would you finally take action? The painful truth is, you don't know how much time you have left. And yet, every day, you trade hours, days, years on things that do not move you closer to the life you truly want. It's time to change that. Right now, write down what you would do if you only had 1 year to live. Don't filter it. Don't hesitate. Just write. Then ask yourself, why aren't you already doing these things? What is stopping you? The reality is nothing is, except the illusion that you have time. For the next 24 hours, live as if your time is running out, because it is. Make the call, start the project, take the risk, stop waiting, because one day the time you thought you had will be gone. And the only thing worse than death is reaching the end and realizing you never truly lived. You now know the 8 habits that have been silently ruining your life. You've seen how the Stoics mastered resilience, discipline, and self-control, how they lived with purpose instead of regret. But knowing is not enough. Action is what changes everything. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep scrolling, returning to old habits, telling yourself you'll change someday? Or will you take control right now? Because the harsh truth is this: life does not wait. You don't get extra time just because you wasted it yesterday. Every second that passes is one you will never get back. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Too many people wake up one day full of regrets, wishing they had acted sooner. Don't let that be you. So here's my challenge to you. Comment below with one habit you are committed to breaking, starting today. Share your experience, your struggles, and what you're going to do differently. Your story might inspire someone else to take action too. If this video gave you even one valuable insight, like, share, and subscribe so more people can discover the power of Stoicism and take back control of their lives. Because at the end of the day, there's only one question that truly matters. When your time is up, will you look back with pride or with regret?